I'm Dave Falvey, and for the last 37 years, I've been practicing law here in Groton. But my career began as an English teacher at our local high school, which back in the day, the federal government had a program that if you taught as a teacher for 10 years, all of your student loans would be canceled. So I know from first-hand experience about student loan debt. I thoroughly enjoyed my career as a teacher, but my student loans had been retired. And then I thought it was time for me to start practicing law. I started my legal career with a law firm, but eventually went out on my own. I was inspired by Gerry Spence's book, Gunning for Justice. I was determined to make the law work for the little guy. At first, I was in the general practice of law, but I became fascinated with the possibilities of setting people free from debt. It had been an issue in our family that during the Great Depression, my grandfather lost his farm. The pain of that loss continued for decades. I began to concentrate all my time on setting people free from debt, from the prison of debt. And when I help people today, I know that my work will have consequences for generations yet unborn. Freedom. New Hampshire has got it right. Live free or die. And there's a famous expression among the Greeks, eleftheria ke thanatos, freedom or death. Debt is the legal construct for slavery. And if a black person could pay off the debt that was imposed on him or her, they could buy their freedom prior to the American Civil War. Very few were able to pay off their debt, but a few were able, through Herculean effort, paid off their debt, and they bought their freedom. I began to realize there are two types of slaves. Namely, political slave is someone who can't vote, and a financial slave is someone who can never throw off the yoke of debt. I tell clients what they already know, which is that we have the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press, and religion. And we think about freedom of the press, we think about in Mexico, there are over 300 journalists who were executed by the drug cartels, some of them beheaded, some of them burnt alive with gasoline, being torched. And we have freedom of the press, but we really don't think about it. Freedom of assembly. Look in Hong Kong right now. Millions of people are protesting that they don't want to lose their democracy. And what's happening? The Chinese government is calling out the army. We have freedom of religion, of course, but another freedom which is very important is the freedom from debt. I won't recite to you the history of debt, but freedom from debt is, of course, so important. It's not discussed in our civil rights, but I consider it to be one of our civil rights, as equal as important as our other freedoms. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is America. Freedom. Many people and attorneys say get a fresh start and file for bankruptcy. But I say that when we file bankruptcy, we are seeking freedom from debt slavery. And then I urge my clients not to squander their freedom, but to use my systems of budgeting and credit improvement in order to obtain within 12 to 24 months a 720 credit score. I compare bankruptcy to an accelerant or a fire. You burn the field, but then you have to go on the field and pull out the tree stumps, the boulders, and prepare the ground for planting and obtain a good credit score. And if you squander your freedom, you simply walk away from the weeds and everything grows back. I urge people not to squander their freedom, and indeed I have a whole program to help people accelerate a good credit score within 12 to 24 months after filing a bankruptcy petition. And I'm so passionate about not squandering your freedom that there's no additional charge for my work in this area. I want freedom to ring throughout the land. But I found that it's critical to dispel the myths about bankruptcy because so many people are afraid, embarrassed, and confused. And on the internet, it is loaded with fraud for the consumer to fall into traps because they're offered false hopes and the scammers use the psychology that no one wants to go to a hospital or a funeral parlor or to a hospital, and no one wants to file bankruptcy. And those scams prey on this fear. We all want to avoid something that is scary and foreign. But the truth shall set you free. And this book is going to pull back the curtain and give you the truth that will be the first step towards freedom. Yours in freedom, Dave Falvey.